There has always been fierce and bitter animosity in the history of history between Arabs and Jews, whose remembrance was further heightened by the rise of the Zionist movement to power and the growth of Arab nationalism and loyalty to Arab unity by the end of the 19th century. And since then the Arabs and Jews have been in bloody endless conflicts that continue to this day. However, from the womb of all the horrific and terrible things caused by the war in the Middle East, one of the best things and initiatives came out to the world, which is the story of what is known as the Yellow Fleet, that we will address in this article in detail. Continue reading with us. In 1967, Egyptian-Israeli relations were badly strained due to Cairo's closing of the terrain straits surrounding the Sinai Peninsula in the face of Israeli ships. Israel responded to this step by launching a major war during which it occupied the Sinai Peninsula, forcing the Egyptian forces to withdraw to the west. And by withdrawing to the western regions, the Egyptian armies closed the Suez Canal and blocked behind it to prevent the enemy forces from exploiting it. In that class, a naval fleet consisting of 15 ships, 4 British ships, 2 American ships, 2 Swedish ships, 2 Polish ships, 2 West German ships, a French ship, a Bulgarian ship, and a Czechoslovak ship were heading south along the Suez Canal, which was long 193 kilometers, when that war broke out. Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser ordered the closure of the Suez Canal, and within hours of the president's orders, the Egyptian forces withdrew old ships to both channel entrances and intentionally sank them in order to make entry or exit from the channel impossible. The U.S. ship, which bore the name SS Observer, was displaced away from the convoy and stayed in the Crocodile Lake while the rest of the ships moved to the widest point of the Suez Canal, which was known as the Bitter Lakes, and there anchored waiting for what the future holds for it. While the war that caused the blockage of the Suez Canal was short and only lasted for 6 days and was known as the Six-Day War, the canal remained blocked and closed to ships for 8 years, causing the 15 ships and their crews to be trapped inside the canal. "We were inside a very comfortable prison," said Captain Miroslav Bruskornicki, captain of the Polish ship Jakarta. "The first month was like a vacation, but the second month was very difficult, and by the third month, things have become terrible." During the 5th month, the 15 crews and their chiefs met and established the Association of Bitter Lakes, and in order to make time pass with the least amount of boredom, they organized social events and activities, such as card games, barbecues, ships, cinemas, and competition sessions in football, water skiing. Lifeboats on ships are equipped with sailing equipment, and after that the yacht club was established, and football matches were played on the largest ship's area, MS Port in Cargill, while church services were provided on the Nordwind ship of West Germany, and films were shown on a ship. Vasil Levski was a Bulgarian, and the Swedish ship, Kalara, had a swimming pool in which the sailors could relax. After more than a year of his detention in the Suez Canal, this Yellow Fleet organized the Olympic Games for Lakes, which coincided with the launch of the Summer Olympics in 1968 in Mexico City. The crews competed from the various 15 ships that belonged to 8 different countries in 14 sports competitions, including sailing, diving, fast running, long jumping, archery, and water polo. And the Poles won these Olympic Games, and the Germans came in at ranked 2nd, and the English ranked 3rd. The members of these crews even adopted their own postal system with handcrafted postage stamps that used to say, Bitter Lakes. Of course, these stamps were not real and did not have any postal authority, and in order to ensure the messages of sailors and members of the Yellow Fleet crews arrived at their destinations, true postage stamps were placed on them alongside the stamps of the handcraft invented. But it was said that some of those mailing envelopes were sent from these ships reached the consignees with stamps of the innovative ships alone. Fortunately, the detention of the crews of the Yellow Fleet ships in the Suez Canal did not last for the entire period of detention of the ships that lasted for 8 whole years, whereby the sailors were allowed to return to their homes, and they were compensated with other teams to compensate them in the management of ship affairs. And this was necessary in order to maintaining the system on it, as there was a lot of necessary maintenance work, which ranged from cleaning, repairing and transporting fuel, fire protection maneuvers, etc. Due to the high temperature of the climate prevailing in the Suez Canal, in which ships were suspended, working hours on ships were reduced from 8 hours to just 6 hours on weekdays, and 4 hours on Saturdays, and Sunday was made a holiday, leaving enough time for sailors to read books, playing card games, and sipping beer. The crews of these ships were replaced every 3 to 4 months, and during the 8 years all served on board the ships trapped in the Suez Canal combined 30,000 men. For some, that period represented one of the most experiments whose effects were engraved in their memories forever. What was inspiring and interesting, however, was the strong community these sailors created, even though they were descended from countries hostile to each other during the Cold War era, wrote British author Cass Sinker to the Express newspaper. The channel was finally opened in 1975, but only 2 ships were able to leave by the power of its engines, the German ships Münsterland and Nordwind. And they were received by 30 citizens who gathered to celebrate their return in Hamburg. After 8 years of isolation and perch in one place, the remaining ships that deserted the desert sands and the hot climate of the region, which earned it the title of the Yellow Fleet, became in a deteriorating condition, which made the countries that belonged to them refrain from saving them, as one of the American ships was sunk. It is the SS African Glen by an Israeli missile in 1973, and Britain considered its 4 ships an irreversible loss, and Norway purchased the Swedish ship Nippon.
هتوحشنا يا جنرال ابو بنط احمر، وانت اسمك ايه انت اللي جنبه؟ كل شيء